It's been a rough couple of days. But I do want to say, I am thankful. I am thankful that my marriage is strong and my children are healthy. Even though my mom still has cancer. In fact, just last night, she went to the oncologist, and now they want to check her lungs. I realize they're just being thorough, but I had such a stab of fear, just like an ice went into my soul when my mom said, "Oh, they're gonna CT my lungs," and she was talking in this voice that wasn't her voice. "We're gonna CT my lungs. They're just being thorough. Sometimes cancer comes from the lungs." And I, in my soul, I was like, no! 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 God, no! God, no! No lungs! Oh, and she's been having pain in her leg. And I was sweeping them up on the floor a week ago, praising God that it was just a cyst. Now she had an MRI done, and it's a cyst and a torn meniscus, which will need surgery. But that's the least of her concerns right now, because she's got freaking pancreatic cancer. Oh, and ovarian. And I just called my husband and I was like, my mother is breaking apart. Piece by piece. What's going on? Rains and pours. No! I don't even know what to do. Pray? Well, yeah. That's it. Pray and hope God breaks through. Stand for a miracle like every other Christian who's been here. And some don't get it and some do. There's my battleground. I went to the tree in the cemetery. And it was harder than I thought. My friend told me, find a tree and lean on it as a little faith exercise. And I walked through this old cemetery at the top of a hill that I found. And as I walked, I looked at the grave markers, beloved husband, beloved wife, our darling child, father, mother, whole families. None of them had dates of death past 1902. So it was a really old cemetery. Overgrown with trees, toppled over, headstones toppled over, grown over with moss. And I found this tree. There was like a brook that ran alongside the cemetery. It was pretty remote. And I found this tree. And I had my Bible, and I was just like, I'm going to be quiet. And I stood next to this tree. And so help me God, I could not bring myself to lean against that tree. I stood there next to that tree. I stood there. For the longest time, I just stood next to the tree. I could not bring myself to lean against it. I knew the tree would hold me up. I saw that it was rooted to the ground. It wasn't a dead tree, it was a living tree. But I couldn't bring myself to put my weight against it. And the more I stood there, the more I thought about it. I was like, I'm afraid. I realize I'm afraid. I know the tree will hold me up. But will God? It was so hard to lean against that tree, and I just wept. I just broke. I just stood there and I was like, God, you have to take this burden away from me, the burden of anger and anxiety. It's no way to live. And I said these words to God that I've never said in my life. And I don't even know where they came from. But I just stood there and wept and wept. And I was like, God, please, please, please help me. Please help. I can't bear up under this. Please. Please take my anger. I'm giving it to you. And then I said, I forgive you, Lord. I know God doesn't need my forgiveness, even do anything. But he also hasn't done something, which I know is not true. I just can't see it. I know. And I said, Lord, I forgive you. Because I needed to forgive the Lord, not because he needed my forgiveness. But I needed to forgive him because I've been holding an ought and anger against the Lord, and I'm still struggling with that. And I needed to say the words out loud. I forgive you. I'm letting go. I choose to let go. And when I said that, it was like this release, and I was able to lean against the tree. And one of the things I noticed was when I was leaning against the tree, the more tired I got, the more my weight sank into the trunk of the tree. I started to lean more heavily on the tree, in spite of my attempts to stand on my own, because holding yourself up as you're leaning to one side is hard. It's exhausting, actually, to the core, to your trunk of your body, your core. It's exhausting to your ankles, which are tipped over to one side. And so I noticed that my body was naturally sort of sinking into the trunk of the tree more the longer I stood there. And I was like, okay, Lord, I get your point. The more we lean on God, the more weight comes off of our own body and goes into him. I just broke. And then, after that came the news of just more, and I had a feeling Satan was going to step up his game. I did. I have in my heart. I've had the sense that it might get darker before God breaks through. And then on the same day, my car broke down. Turns out the fix for it is $1,000. And then the boiler in the house broke and we had no heat, all like in the same day. I hate that expression, when it rains, it pours. It actually pisses me off, even if it is true, because it does not encompass the root cause of what we're walking through. My mom is supposed to be walking on the treadmill. They went and got a treadmill, and now she can't because she has a torn meniscus. She probably had it for a while, but my mother just lives with pain. It's just her way. And it's just like everything is happening at once. And my husband this morning got up early and made me a coffee and said to me, he said, I've been crying out to God for you. He said, I never thought you would be somebody who would experience a crisis of faith, because I'm still struggling with the idea that someone can devote their lives to the Lord with nothing in return. And I don't know. I don't know any other way. What am I supposed to do? Look to Buddha? Pray to the tree? No, I prayed to the creator of the tree. I just don't know what else to do, And David said, whom have I in heaven and on earth? Whom have I? Whom has my mother in heaven and on earth but the Lord? And without him, there's nothing. And I've been struggling with faith because it doesn't feel like it's enough. It just doesn't feel like it's enough to just pray. Even though I believe in prayer, it doesn't feel like, I teach about on the way of the worshiper to worship. It's your source of strength, because in his presence is fullness of joy. That's Psalm 16:11 and Nehemiah 8:10. The joy of the Lord will be your strength. I can't even worship. I know the enemy attacks us in those areas so that we're weak in those areas, because those are the areas we need to win. Those are the areas that we're going to use to win. Those are the weapons. But boy, I'm struggling with it. God has been faithful. God has been faithful. Last night I was cleaning out my email inbox. Somebody had sent me this song that they had composed. And at the top of the email, I haven't seen this thing in 6 months easily. It was at like the bottom of my email. And it said at the top, sometimes people reach out to me for the Way of the Worshipper and send me stuff, like a song they want to have published or something. I think I have that kind of pull in the world, which I do not. And at the top, it said, a song for Alicia, from Psalm 28:7. I don't think I ever looked that up. I looked at it, listened to the song, thought it was a little corny. So this morning I got up and I thought, I'm going to look up Psalm 28:7. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusted in him, and I was helped. Therefore my heart rejoices, And with my song, I will thank him. With my song. All these little things along the way have been helping to bolster my spirit moment by moment. And there's a song that I've been listening to. It's by a group called United Pursuit. It's called Hidden. And it just says, there was one when I was young who knew my heart and he knew my sorrow. He held me by the hand and he led me to trust him. And now I am hidden in the safety of your love. I trust your heart and your intentions. I trust you completely. I'm listening intently. You'll guide me through these many shadows. My dad came to my house last night. My mom and my dad. And they just got that call about the lung cancer, about testing for lung cancer, and about the torn meniscus. Like, that all happened yesterday. And I said to my dad, I said, you want some chicken soup? I said, I made some chicken soup. I'll heat you up a bowl of chicken soup. Because they're eating a really restricted diet. So I'm trying to actually keep food in the house, even though they have yet to take me up on that offer. I am trying to keep food around that they can have and make food that I can offer them when they come to my home. And my dad was like, I can't eat right now. He said, this day has been so hard, Alicia. I can't eat anything. My mom was walking and like dragging her sore leg a little. And I found this picture last night. Again, I was cleaning out my email inbox, and at the bottom, like, Shutterfly had sent me like, these are your photos from this month, years ago. And it was a picture from my wedding day, 12 years ago. And my mother looked like a beauty queen. It was 12 short years ago. She looks like a Barbie doll in those pictures. And she's there smiling with her father, my grandpa, who has since died, and her sisters, and my grandmother, who is now in the hospital with a stroke. I remember this one time I was in South Africa. I was 17. And I'd fallen in love with a boy there. And I was on a mission trip. And I was there for months, many months. And I fell in love with a local boy. He was the first person I ever kissed, first person I ever had feelings for in my life. And special first kiss, very magical, at the end of a pier out on the ocean in South Africa, in Cape Town. No, Port Elizabeth. Then our church youth group actually came over, because I was there originally for a different reason for a few months. And then the church youth group came over. And one of the rules was we had a 6-inch rule. Nobody dating or touching or whatever. And my dad was the pastor. So I was like telling the youth group leader constantly, I'm like, please, you think you're the big dog? Okay, I'm the big dog because my dad's a big dog. You nobody. So he kept saying Alicia and Tim. He allowed this guy actually to come with us with a lot of what we were doing with the youth stuff. He allowed him to travel around with us. He was very good about that. It was really nice of him. But I was typical Alicia that everybody knew to be an endless boat rocker. Always. Just that's my way. Got the anointing of being a jerk and causing issues to everybody. I don't know. Anyway. So after a few weeks of me defying him endlessly. I didn't know, but he went to my dad and said, what do I do about her? She's defying, she and this guy are always like holding hands and leaning against each other. And there are other people on the youth team who are dating and they're respecting everything. And my dad's like, get rid of the guy. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know my dad had been part of that. And so Eric, the youth leader, puts me and Tim in a car, in a van, white van. And he drove us to the top of this mountain. And at this time we were in Cape Town, Table Mountain. No, I know where we were. We were in a little town called White River. And he drove us up to the top. And I didn't know why. I don't know what I was thinking. But what he turned around and said was, you have 5 minutes. And then Tim is going to get out of this car and you will never see him again. He said, we are going back to America and Tim is going to be here in South Africa and you can write your letters, but you will never see him again. I'll give you 5 minutes to say your goodbyes. And he got out of the van and walked away. I mean, I don't have a ton of clear memories about that day other than, boy, I was furious. I was heartbroken, all of it. And I think he said at that time, like, I talked to your dad. This is over. You defied me for the last time. Eric was like 25 at the time. I was 17. But anyway, Tim and I said our goodbyes. Sure enough, never did see him again. We wrote letters for years and then just kind of crumbled away. But Eric drove me back. We were on a compound, a walled-in compound, because we were in like the jungle of White River, there was a rough area. And it was a Bible college was there. So I remember I was so angry. I was so overcome with anger. I left the girls' dormitory and I started to just walk around the compound. The grounds, it was really large, and I just started to walk and I thought, I'm going to walk away into the jungle and I'm going to disappear and let the monkeys eat me. The gorillas come after me. Some toucan is going to be plucking out my eyeball by the time they find me. And so I started to walk and I thought, I'm leaving. Screw you, Eric. Screw you, Dad. You want to take Tim away from me? Think you're better than me? Think you're big man with all the power? I'm leaving. And so I started to walk toward the gates of that compound. I was crying, furious. And finally, I leaned up against a palm tree. I didn't think about that till just now. I leaned up against a palm tree. And I collapsed. I leaned against it and just sort of collapsed to the ground. And I was just crying and crying and crying. And there was crowds of people, actually, because it was a Bible college. There was a lot of people just walking by. I could hear people being like, what's wrong? And to themselves, I could hear people talking like, what's she crying about? And I just buried my face in my hands. I pulled my knees up to my chest and I just cried. Well, then this man and this woman, all of a sudden I hear these voices like, excuse me. And I look up and it's a man and a woman. And they were like, the Lord has a word for you and we would like to share it with you. They're like, come with us. So they take me into one of the buildings and they sit me down in a chair. And they just began to intercede over me and to prophesy. I wrote it all down, but all my stuff got stolen when I was there. So I no longer have the record of that prophecy. But I vaguely remember them talking about fire and being a person of fire and how hard that would be for me to control. but that God had a reason for the fire. And it was going to set people ablaze. And I remember thinking that that was a really magical, God moment, that those people found me. And truly, before God, I know that they saved my life, because certainly back then, I was the kind of person where if I was going to walk off into the jungle and let something kill me, I would have done it. I have a way of following through. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, even if it's bad. Still struggle with that. But now that I have a husband and children, I do have larger perspective. And in such a large way right now, I feel like that with the Lord. I feel like I'm just going to walk into the jungle, big guy, and I'm going to let something take me down. I'm going to let the predators take me down. And my husband is trying to be the one who's saving my life from my own self-destruction, my hateful questions at the Lord, my doubt, my anger, and rage, and pain, and fear. I am fighting the urge. My words on the way of the worshiper continually come back to bite me in the butt. For a year, I've been writing words of faith. How to worship God in hard times. Are you angry with God? David fought the lion and the bear, because next was the giant. Unbelievable. It's like, I hate myself right now. I'm like, why? What did you know about anything, stupid cow? You didn't even know how bad life could be. Writing these words of faith. Screw your faith, Alicia. My husband was like, do you even believe anything you've ever written? I was like, apparently I don't. It's been this horrible mind screw to read all these words I wrote. I remember what I was thinking when I wrote them. I remember the hope and the faith and my trust in the Lord is so strong. And now I'm ready to walk into the jungle, because the pain of walking into the jungle feels like it would be less, and letting the predators take me down, disappearing into God knows what, feels preferable than the pain of staying against the tree and grieving and walking through the pain and finding strength on the other side. And my life is filled with testimonies of the goodness of God. Like that day that he sent someone to find me and to save me from myself. And after these people talked to me, Eric's wife, Tammy, when I finally got back, I remember we got back to America and she took me for a ride in the car and she played me this song. She said, the song makes me think of you. And it was called Gold in the Fire. I think I see gold in the fire. And she said to me, Alicia, there's gold in the fire. There's gold. She said, all you see is fire. But God sees the gold. And I don't know what else to do but pray. I don't know what else to do but worship. I don't have any other coping skills here. None. I just gotta lean against the tree and take the weight off of myself. But I'm struggling because the stakes are so high. They're so high, it's a matter of life and death. I'm scared to believe that my mother will live, even though I desperately want it. I'm scared to believe it. I guess I'm scared to be wrong. I'm scared that she'll die. And the enemy, I'll walk into the jungle and the enemy will take me down, which my mother would not want. She had a dream about me she had a dream about a couple days ago that we were running through a series of mazes and obstacles. And we were like figuring things out. And she's like, Alicia, you were with me the whole time. And I was like, that's the plan, Mom. That's the plan. I'm going to be with you the whole time. And she deserves somebody who isn't a phony. She deserves somebody who believes what they say, and in my deepest places, I do. The Lord knows that. The Lord knows I believe. He does. But my humanity, the human side of me, is just fighting it all. Over the summer, I did a Viking obstacle race. And I said to my mom last night, I said, Mom, I remember some of the first obstacles were the worst ones. One of the first obstacles you get to was a 6-foot wall. If you're fit, which I am, you can scale a 6-foot wall. It's hard, but you can do it. And then I scaled it, I felt like a big champ, kept running, and then there was an 8-foot wall. I was like, oh, well, that's different. And I was able to scale the 8-foot wall by myself. I'm a tall person. I had the body strength. I was able to jump and grab it. There's like a little piece off to the side, a brace for the wall, and I used that, and I climbed up and flipped myself over and jumped down. Feeling like a champ. Then it was the 10-foot wall, about a quarter of the mile down in the woods. And when I saw the 10-foot wall, I didn't actually know these obstacles ahead of time. I'd never done anything like this before. I had no idea what was coming next. I was just gonna I'll just face it when it comes. And it was a 10-foot wall. And I could not get over it. I could not. I did try. And I had a partner with me. We all had partners. We'd been partnered up. And I said to my partner, I'm gonna need your help. I said, would you get underneath me? And I showed her how to stand. I said, I was a cheerleader. I said, stand like this. And I'm gonna climb on your thigh. And then I'm gonna step on your shoulder. And I'm gonna jump over this wall. She didn't actually make it herself on that particular one. And you know what? When I got over that wall, it felt pretty good, right? That was at the beginning of the race. And at the end, after the mud bog and the babbling brook with a heavy net, you had to go underneath and scrape your teeth along a bunch of rocks, was the next set of walls. 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet. I said to my mom, this is a Viking race, Mom. I said, this is just the 6-foot wall. I said, when we get to the 10-foot wall, we'll get over it. We'll use each other and we'll get over it. My mother has cancer, but Jesus has the answer.